Hi Kaya Tribe, welcome to week 4 of mind training. And this week I want to talk about when things fall apart. So, what we do when, on a big scale, when the ground gets pulled out from under us, and what we do on a day to day basis when we're having just maybe one of those days where it feels like we don't have the will to do anything, to even get out of bed sometimes. First of all, remembering that that's normal. It's a part of being a human being sometimes, that those ups and downs are just things that we go through. But that there are things that we can do to ease the suffering that we're going through, both on a big scale when things are happening in our life that are out of our control, or our entire world has been pulled out from under us, but also just on a smaller scale when we're just having a bad day. And first, understanding that there are things we can do. First of all, like the things that we have learned over the last few weeks, and that's shifting our mind to thinking about things that we're grateful for. But that's also in getting ourselves into the present moment and realizing that depression only comes from being in the past, and that anxiety comes from thinking about the future. And if we can be right here and right now in the present moment, that those feelings tend to subside. But sometimes it's so much, or things get to be so overwhelming that we lose control of our ability to take our mind and take it in a different direction. I like to think of it like a path that's worn down through the woods, like a path that's worn from over and over and over walking the same path. And it takes a lot of effort at first to create a new path. But then once we've established a new path, then we go down that path automatically. But if you're in a place when you're going through something hard, or things get so hard that it feels like you have no mind control, the things that I've done that work for me are to replace the voice in my head with somebody that has more wisdom in the situation, or more peace in the situation, or someone that I look up to spiritually or mentally. I will find a book and just not even allow myself to have thoughts of my own until those feelings pass. I think it's important to sometimes feel our feelings, and that they're important indicators for things that we need to feel and experience in our life. Maybe sometimes things we need to change in our life, but also we need to have an escape plan for when things are so bad that we feel like we can't get through it. One of the books that I recommended for our reading for this brick is called The Wisdom of No Escape. And the wisdom that comes from not running from our feelings, from not trying to escape our feelings, from just sitting with boredom or fear or loneliness or anxiety, and knowing that all of our feelings have a purpose and all of our feelings are meant to be felt, there's a lot of wisdom in that. So I think balancing that with also knowing that sometimes we do get overwhelmed and we need a teacher that can guide us out of that. So my favorite teacher of all time is Pema Chodron. And I put a couple of the books on our reading list for this month. So it's on your Kaya Bingo. So look at that and listen to some of her books, read some of her books, or find whatever teacher resonates with you, and have that as like a 911 for yourself when you need help getting your mind changed and your mind out of whatever it is that you're struggling with. Sometimes it takes doing the hard thing, closing the gap. I heard something today that said closing the gap between knowing and doing. Like, spend your whole life closing the gap between knowing and doing, because we know the right way, right? We know how to get our bodies in shape. We know how to take care of ourselves. We know how to connect with others. We know how to really create the life that we want, but then closing that space between knowing and doing just happens really one action at a time. And it comes from doing what we don't feel like doing a lot of the time. It comes from knowing that the bigger picture and doing something because it's good for our ultimate self and our ultimate goals, even though maybe in the right here and right now we don't feel like doing it. That's how we create happiness, is like doing the things that other people maybe don't want to do. And that creates that success. And I don't know why life is that way, right? It's just like one of the paradoxes of life is like sometimes, a lot of the times, the things we don't feel like doing are the things that are going to create long-term happiness for us. Something that's was really helpful for me that I did from a book that I read one time is writing down the things that you think will bring you pleasure. So we could do that this week, is like write down some things that bring you pleasure and ways that you can get out of situations that you're struggling with. And then write down, so maybe you make a list of 10 things you can do when you're struggling or you're going through something. And then when you complete that activity, write down before you do it, how happy you think it's going to make you. And then afterwards, how happy it actually made you. And what you don't realize is even when you don't feel like doing something, you make yourself do it, and it brings you more happiness, more peace than you anticipated. So getting ourselves to write down what we're going to do when we do feel like we're down and out and we're out of control. And then when we have that list, write down how happy we think it's going to make us. Like maybe it's going for a run. You write it down, you think it's going to bring you up to a 5 out of 10. And then sometimes afterwards, it just fixed everything and let everything go, right? The other day I went for a run. I did not feel like it. I procrastinated, and it was the afternoon, and it was 75 degrees, which is basically like 100 from where I'm from in Cardiff. And I was not feeling like running, and literally 10 steps into my run, I was so grateful that I did it. So give yourself that gift of just looking at the things that you know bring you happiness, being outdoors. Maybe it's reading a book, maybe it's taking a bath. It doesn't have to be anything that where you have to spend any money or even go anywhere. Maybe it's just going outside and looking at the sky at night and realizing how tiny you are and how much you have to be grateful for. Maybe it's calling and reaching out to somebody. We talk about that a lot, but that giving to others and acts of service are the fastest shortcut to happiness. That the happiest people are the people who volunteer and who give the most. So that's like a unselfish way to be selfish, is like finding happiness in doing things for other people. So that's what we're going to do this week, is make a plan for when things do fall apart, because they do and they will if they aren't right now, and having a strategy, so actions that we can take when things fall apart, things we can listen to take over that voice, that inner roommate that tends to be negative, or look at the dark side of things, or ruminate in our past, or get anxiety about our future, that we have a voice of a teacher that we can rely on to take over for us, and then do those things so that we can save ourselves when we need to, and also having the compassion to understand that it's normal, that there's nothing wrong with you, that we always say, why me, what's wrong with me? There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with me. We're humans, and it's what we do. And then also having the wisdom to sit with your experience as long as you possibly can. So just even if it's a moment of just sitting with your boredom, sitting with your fear, sitting with your pain, and understanding that that's a teacher, welcoming it in, and that pain is our greatest teacher. And it is our greatest source of creating change for ourselves. I love you guys. I'm so proud of everything so far that we've done together this last month. We have this last week of making a strategy, making a plan, and then maybe just throughout the day, when you do have lows, that you dig into that tool bag that you have of making yourself happy and bringing yourself peace. Love you.